Alright, so look, man, I've recorded this video so many times over and over again, and I just found myself defending this game way more than I felt comfortable with, because I have frustrations with this game, I have negatives, but I do feel like this game deserves someone to actually be positive about it, because it's not as bad as reviewers and small YouTubers and everyone is making it out to be. I think a lot of people wanted to hate this game and the reviewers gave it a bad review, so it was like everybody just got validation that, oh yeah, fuck this game, but it's not as bad as you think it is, you know what I'm saying? So just take this video with a grain of salt. I'll make a negative video on its own, then I'll make a negative video on Volition because they deserve it. But I'm sorry, this is just what my review turned out to be, and I still didn't even get to touch on ventures and things of that nature. But look, we gonna talk about that in the negative review because the ventures are low-key negative. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. So I've completed the Saints Row reboot and wanted to create a review. I told you guys I was going to make a review, and I have some opinions on the game. I've completed it in totality. I have about 315 gigabytes of footage on my hard drive that, you know, it's a bunch of glitches, a bunch of everything. It's a whole lot of everything, right? Now, this is my second time recording this because before I realized I was, first of all, defending the game a lot. And I feel like I was giving the game a little too much credit. There are some bad things in this game, all right? But also, you know, like I felt as if not only was I defending it too much, but I was kind of rambling a lot. So I'm going to just go ahead and get straight into it. But the first two questions I want to answer for you guys is the game worth your $60? And is the game a good Saints Row game? I think one of the answers to those questions is fairly easy to answer. You can look around. Of course, the game is not worth your $60. I'll give you a price point of what it is worth, but it's definitely not worth $60. And is the game a good Saints Row game? That's a little bit more difficult to answer. But let's go ahead and get into it. So this Saints Row is a reboot, of course, kind of restructuring the characters. And one thing that I've realized is that this game is pretty much a reboot of Saints Row 3, not a reboot of the entire series. If you're looking for a Saints Row 2 reboot, it is not that. It's just simply not that. And I think it's pretty evident why it's not that. Saints Row 3 is the highest selling Saints Row ever. I can pull up these sales records pulled from different, you know, articles about how much Saints Row 2 sold, Saints Row 3 sold. Saints Row 3 is the highest selling game. They didn't even really report too much about Saints Row 4 because I guess it didn't really sell that well, in my honest opinion. I know Agents of Mayhem didn't sell that well. I think Volition realized where they fucked up at, but they also realized where they had the most success at. So they took Saints Row 3's plot line and story and essentially rebooted that. Really took the whole plot line. The only thing they really changed was the characters. I remember in one of my comments someone said that the reboot was a ripoff of Saints Row 3, and I was like, well, is it really a ripoff if, you know, it's a Saints Row game? You know what I'm saying? But I kind of get what he's saying now. It really is. They really just took Saints Row 3 and put it into a new game with new characters. They jumbled up all the characters to make new characters. I could give you examples. Like, for example, I believe Eli, which is the nerdy black guy. Eli is a mix between Pierce and Kinsey. You know, I know it's a little racist because, you know, I'm just saying Pierce because he's black, but I feel like he has a little bit of Pierce's, you know, way of going about things, and also he has a bit of Kinsey inside of him. And they put those two characters together, munched them together, and you have Eli. And when you look at, you know, the female character, Nina, she's just Shaundi. She's essentially Shaundi, but less woke. You also have the other character who doesn't wear a shirt. I would say he's like fucking Matt Miller. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's just a random woke NPC type of character who doesn't wear a shirt. And I feel like, yes, there is some cringe behind that, but you know what? He's an okay character. I feel like the only character that they really, like, there is a character that they really mixed together, which I think is the boss. I think they made the boss, they put Johnny Gat's characteristics and Pierce characteristics all together and then also gave him motivation. So that's the character analysis for me. I think they did an okay job. Are they a little cringe? Yes. Would I have preferred the old characters? Yes. But you know what? They do what they do, and it is a reboot, so I can't really get mad. They could have done the characters better, but I think they did an okay job, and I like the fact that they gave the boss an actual character. He has motivations. He has, you know, wants. And even though the old boss had that, I feel like they gave him more of a character in this game, which I do appreciate. You know, I know a lot of people don't like that, but I do appreciate that they actually tried to give him more character. Now, as far as the story goes, you have these young adults, and I will get into the marketing of this game little bit later, but it's way different than what you would think. But the young adults, essentially, one of them is from a gang terrorist group, sort of, that is this woke terrorist group that, you know, believes capitalism and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, he's a part of that group. And then you have the boss. He's a part of a militia. And also he does random jobs to essentially keep himself afloat and pay rent. He does random jobs like robbing people, doing assassin missions, like going on the Wanted app and killing people in the assassin missions. He does stuff like that to get his living. And then you have Nina, who is pretty much like a car repairer, or, you know, a sort of nerdy person that helps with the other gang, the Luchador gang. Forgot what the gang is called, but it's kind of like a ripoff of Killbane's gang back in Saints Row 3. She is like one of those Fast and the Furious females in the gang who kind of helps the gang with their tools and their cars and evolving the gang to have more assets, I guess. I don't know. Then you have Eli, the relegated black guy in the group. And I feel like Eli is kind of like the book nerd. They're all roommates. So I don't know how they came together in their friendship or how far that friendship goes back or whatever, but they're all roommates. Eli is the smart guy. He's the book nerd. He's the one with a college degree. He has a want to build an enterprise and things of that nature. And for some reason or another, they all get pushed away from their sources of income. Nina gets pushed away from her gang. The guy with no shirt, Kevin, gets pushed away from the idols. The boss get pushed away from the martial militia group. And they all come to the conclusion that they need to make money. And they feel like, well, they're all in a gang or killing people in some way, shape, or form. So why not create their own gang and do it for themselves? It's kind of like this little corny thing on the radio that keeps coming on, telling them how they should be their own boss instead of being a part of another group, being sheep, essentially. And how they need to just be their own boss. So they create their own gang. It really has nothing much to do with, student loan debt or anything of that nature. It's really just that. They want to be their own boss. For one reason or another, they all got, pushed into a position where they had to be their own boss and kill and murder for their own gain instead of someone else's. That's the point of the game. That's the point of the plot. That's what drove them into being the Saints. Now, the dialogue is pretty bad. But honestly, if I was to say anything about the dialogue, I would say like the dialogue is on point with Saints Row 3. It's on point with Saints Row 4. If you don't like Saints Row 3 dialogue, then I don't know what to tell you. I think this game just isn't for you. But given that Saints Row 3 is my favorite Saints Row, I didn't mind it. And it felt on par with the other Saints Rows that I like. Saints Row 2 is a little bit more serious, so I can understand anyone who's a heavy Saints Row 2 fan and expecting them to go back to their roots, which they said they would do. But essentially, if you're looking for dialogue like Saints Row 2, it's not here. It's more like Saints Row 3. And honestly, I think it's on par, and I'm a fan of it. I didn't think it was too bad. There were some points where I cringed, and I'm sure you guys can find clips of that cringe shit, but it wasn't that bad to me. Now, customization in this game, I feel like some things they added more to, some things they took away. For example, the character customizations, I feel like they had more options in previous Saints Row games that just carried on from each game to each game that are now not in this reboot. Like, for example, Drez. I always picked the character with Drez, whether it was a female character with big boobs or a dude with big pecs. Either way, I always used Drez on my character. The Drez I was looking for wasn't there. They had some standard 2K Drez, but it wasn't like the Drez that I'm used to, the roster Drez, you know what I'm saying? So I don't like the fact that some things just weren't there. Also, there was no black voice like the other, Saints Row games. I think they did have a black voice, but in my first impressions y'all saw, I kind of skipped over the black voice because I didn't think it sounded black. I didn't even know that was a black voice. Then I ended up picking like this hick redneck voice, which I think that person did a really good job with his voice acting. If you pick the British person or any other voices, that's kind of your fault. Or if you made like a really goofy ass character and they're saying these cringe lines with these goofy ass voices and it looks goofy, then yeah, it's gonna seem goofy, you know what I'm saying? But using the redneck voice with my black character with the dreads, it worked. And most of his lines didn't sound that cringe. Sometimes the dialogue in totality did sound cringe, but my character worked for the voice lines that was coming out, in my opinion. I feel like the cars customization is dope. I love the customization for the cars. I feel like it got really extensive, and I feel like there were more options in this game than any other Saints Row. And I feel like they should have they should have marketed that more as far as bigger and better than the character customization, because I feel like the character customizations kind of took a step back while the vehicle customization took a step forward in a lot of ways. You can even customize helicopters and things of that nature, and I really like the customization when it comes to vehicles. Another thing when it comes to customization is there's, I feel like they took away some customization and options when it comes to your safe houses. I don't feel like you can have as many safe houses. I feel like they probably should have went more into actually decking out your safe houses more than they have in the past, and they kind of took a step back. Not only do you not have as many safe houses, can't really buy any. There's only 2 or 3 of them, and you lose access to one of them as soon as you get at a certain point in the game. So I feel like they took a step back with that. Kind of disappointing. But other than that, I like the customization in this game. I feel like it was give and pull, and I feel like I wish they would have just extended more instead of pulling. You know what I'm saying? I feel like there's a lot of stuff that messed with my experience because they took it out of the experience. So yeah, that's the customization. The driving. I hear a lot of people talking shit about the driving in Saints Row. I liked it. It felt like Watch Dogs driving. I know that's not a compliment, but I enjoyed Watch Dogs driving. It seemed like they took Watch Dogs driving and made it 100% better. I feel like people keep comparing the driving in this Saints Row reboot to the ones in the past. I feel like the driving in this Saints Row reboot is 100 times better and feels a lot more ironed out than it did in the past. Now, I will say this. There are some issues that has carried over. Like, for example, the sound of the cars. We are in 2022 and they still using these basic ass sound effects. It doesn't sound like you're actually driving a car. It sounds like someone's looping a audio loop of a car engine, which we've well gone past that. That was dated back when they used to do it back in the day, and it's even more dated now. And it shows how dated it is now. I mean, I remember we played Days Gone where a motorcycle actually has that. You actually feel like you're driving a motorcycle. You have GTA where it actually feels like you're driving a Lamborghini. You know what I'm saying? Even Watch Dogs does a better way of, looping the sound and finding realistic car engine sounds when driving a car. In all these games, it is just looping of sound, but it's very obvious in Saints Row, the reboot, and all Saints Row games. And I feel like I wish they would have did that better, because you can definitely tell the difference between you driving a motorcycle in game and then when you switch over to a cutscene, and you can really tell they put the actual sound of a motorcycle instead of just a car engine sound in the cutscene while he's driving. That's kind of annoying. I just wish they would actually have real sound effects for the car engines and not have it sound so loopy. Actually put some work into that. But hey, it is what it is. But other than that, I like the driving in the game. I will say something about the direction. Sometimes it'll send you in one direction and then it'll be like, oh no, turn around. And it's just like, well, I wish I was a little bit more accurate. But hey, it is what it is. Now, there is a problem with the audio. I don't know what people are talking about as far as the mixing thing and things like that. I did hear some mixing problems. Sometimes the voices sounded too low. Sometimes the action sounded too loud, but then it would flip on his head. And then sometimes the action was too low and sometimes the voices was too loud. But my biggest issue with the audio was the fact that, this was an issue that I had with all Saints Rows, but it's in this Saints Row also, is that the audio would just literally, like, there would be, it felt like there was no soundtrack to the game. And then sometimes there was a soundtrack to the game. But there were a lot of times where I was just shooting people to silence. It was just shooting people to silence. Like, there was no soundtrack. Most games, when action is happening, like Spider-Man, you're swinging, you start hearing the Spider-Man swinging noises. You know what I'm saying? Or when you're playing GTA and you're in a shooting section, you start hearing like little background noises, little background soundtrack noises to set the tone for what you're doing in the game. Saints Row doesn't do that a lot of times. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it does set the scene and have a soundtrack in the background, but most times it really doesn't. And it kind of pulls you out a little bit because it's just like, dang, this is fun. I enjoy this, but I wish you had a little background music for this. But that's it for audio as far as me. I'm going to move on to combat. The combat in the game, I don't feel like it's bad as what people are saying. I understand that a lot of people feel like I'm defending this game. But look, I enjoyed my time with it. The combat, though repetitive at times, yes, you are just showing up at places and shooting at people. I feel like they took a lot of steps forward in this game. It plays better than what it looks like. I will say that. Shooting people plays way better than it looks like, because you start hearing the sound that you popping people's heads off. It shoots off something in your head. It's like, oh, that's cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you the way that the reticle is set up, you get a headshot. It feels gratifying to get a headshot. You know what I'm saying? To get that sound. And I don't really have much problems with it. I like the fact that they didn't just stick with the original Saints Row 3 and Saints Row 4 shooting. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I didn't like the way it looked in the marketing. I didn't like the way it looked in, just watching someone play the game, but actually having the controller in my hand, playing the game. The gunplay is fun as fuck. I also like what they did with these, with the animations, as far as takedown animations. I like the fact that they made it useful. I feel like back in the old Saints Row, you could just spam it. Like, let's say you were low in health, you could just run around spamming the takedowns. And I mean, it was cool for back in the day, but I like the fact that they made it an actual use. You have the little power up thing. You can do it maybe once every 3 to 4 kills. And every time you do it, you heal a little bit. So I enjoy the fact that they made that change. I know a lot of people don't like that, but I like the change. I just did. I like the change. The gameplay was fun. Yeah, it was dated to an extent. A lot of Saints Row is dated. And, I just feel as if y'all have allowed Volition to do this. I'm not caping for Volition. I'm just not. I'm simply not caping for them. But if you compare this to every other Saints Row, it's on par. The dialogue, the gameplay, the outdated gameplay, whether it's through cars, whether it's through gunplay, it's always been outdated. I mean, Saints Row 2 was probably the most innovative they've ever been, but that was for that time. You know what I'm saying? But ever since Saints Row 2, they've just been having outdated mechanics ever since. People complain about the game design and how repetitive that is. Their game design has always been low-key trash. I won't say it's always been repetitive, but it's always been low-key bad. You could tell some things just weren't tested in these older games. I remember there was a time where, you had to cover Pierce with a rocket launcher while you're in a helicopter, and you could just tell it wasn't tested, because either you would wait until the people would not be near him, because every time you shoot the rocket launcher you had a chance of hurting him also, because they didn't put no protective over him. So it was either you wait, but then they're attacking him and taking his health, or you shoot him as soon as you see him, and then sometimes you're actually shooting Pierce. And I would fail the mission a lot because it just felt like they didn't test that part of the game. There were a lot of times where I was like, oh, it didn't seem like they tested this. This is bad game design. And plenty of their other games, that's still here. And people are criticizing it as if, they're claiming to be Saints Row fans and then criticizing stuff that's been in Saints Row games forever. And I'm not sitting here saying that, oh, you shouldn't criticize it. You should. But if you're a Saints Row fan and you're criticizing it, it should have been criticized a long time ago. Those were outdated, bad game design decisions for a long time. And people are acting as if, oh, they just doing it now, which isn't the case. Yeah, the bugs and glitches. All of Volition's games have bugs and glitches, heavy bugs and glitches. And that's not an excuse, but y'all have allowed this. Y'all have allowed this to happen. And I mean, this is their engine. This is their spaghetti code that we have accepted for decades now. So to just sit here and complain about it now, yeah, it's unacceptable. I enjoyed this game more than I thought I would, but the game kept fighting against me. There were so many bugs, glitches that I was just trying to have fun with the game. I beat the entire game. I'm still playing it now. I played it last night, knowing that I had to review it in the morning. So like, I enjoyed this game. I like what it was. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was a fun game, but I don't know. I think I'm going to make another video about the marketing of this game and how bad Volition marketed this game. I feel like that deserves its own video. But yeah, the performance was on par with what Volition has been doing. And that's what I'm going to say. Was this a good Saints Row game? In my opinion, it was a good Saints Row game. I feel like the dialogue was cringe, but every Saints Row dialogue is cringe, in my opinion. It's always been low-key cringe. You know what I'm saying? Like, them in Saints Row 3, them driving in the car singing along, and I'm like, I always cringe at that part. Y'all can't tell me that shit wasn't cringe. But there are some people who really like that. You know what I'm saying? So, and I was low-key one of them. Yeah, I was cringing, but I was like, it gave the game some character. It was character back then, and now it's, cringe dialogue and everybody hates it. I feel like the dialogue is on par with what Saints Row 3 did. I know it may seem like I'm defending this game, like I'm one of them Saints Row defenders, If y'all seen my other videos on this channel, I was not looking forward to this game. I bought it simply to review it. But now that I played it, I realized that this is Saints Row. All they did was reboot Saints Row 3. They took Saints Row 3's dialogue, Saints Row 3's story, Saints Row 3's characters, and just made it a new thing. They put the characters and jumbled them up. They used the same low-key plot. All of it's the same. You know what I'm saying? And people are now mad at it because it's the same. And there is false marketing. There is a problem. It's not all our fault. Some of the fault is on Volition and their marketing team. But, you know, now that we have it, I can definitely say that this is on par with what Volition has been making for the past 4 or 5 games. And I'm not mad at it. I'm not. I'm not going to say the game is worth $60 and you should go pick it up now. I would highly say don't do that. I would have highly said don't do that for Saints Row 3 also. Saints Row 3 wasn't a $60 game. I don't think I bought it for $60. Saints Row 4 wasn't a $60 game. I didn't buy that for $60. Agents of Mayhem, it wasn't a $60 game. I didn't buy it for $60. You know what I'm saying? All of these games are AA games at best. And you should wait until they're like, I would say below $30. That's what this game is worth. Below $30. That is my feelings. But this is a good Saints Row game. Despite what, no matter what anybody tells you, this is a Saints Row game. And I believe it's a good Saints Row game. That's my personal opinion. But yeah, I'm going to make a whole nother video on the bad marketing of the game. And also make a video on the anti-woke crowd. Because I believe that they are going on a roll with inaccurate information around now. So hopefully you guys can look forward to that. I also have another video looking at other reviews of what's being said on Metacritic and things like that. Make sure you stay tuned for that. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.